Well, hi, and welcome back to the workshop. And so we're just about ready to bed this rifle, so as you can see here on the barreled action, I've got tape in two locations on the barrel, and this is so that the barreled action sits level in the stock, and it just sits on these 2 points. The action's just hanging out there with no influence on it whatsoever. Now, when I put it in there, when I set it into the bedding, I use the factory screws to hold it in place, and I use the factory bottom metal for alignment and everything. But those screws are not tightened up. When I put them in, I'll bring them up just to where they start to deflect the action a little bit, and then I'll back them off, and so that they're really just there for alignment purposes. The bottom metal is taped in place, and just so it doesn't fall out on the floor. So anyway, we'll start. I've already mixed up the batch of marine epoxy here that I'm going to use. And the thing is, with any epoxy, you just want to mix it thoroughly and then mix it a little more before you use it. And so I've provided clearance everywhere that I thought I should have it, except for one place I just noticed right here that looked just a little suspect. There we go. So I've got clearance on the lug on the bottom and the front, and I've cleaned everything on the full length of the. Let's go ahead and move you up here a little bit, but I can't have you in my way here. But so anyway, there, and I'll be able to put the epoxy in there and set the barreled action in. So we start just by glopping a bunch of epoxy here in that recoil lug mortise. And now I try, generally speaking, to avoid the use of too many complex technical terms, but in this particular case, glopping is the term that fits best, so we're going to have to stick with it. And glopping is, of course, in this case, a verb. Some people use it as a noun, but I think that's a glop isn't really a proper noun. I think that's they're confusing it with glob, which of course is a combination of glop and blob. But anyway, I digress. Back to the bedding. So we get plenty up here in the receiver ring area, so that, and as I said, it was pretty obvious that there was a void in the previous bedding attempt, and that created a problem. We're hoping to avoid the void, and here we go. Now, quite the opposite of glopping here, we're going to smear a thin layer through the middle portion of the bed here. And on this, here again, this part is just, in reality, cosmetic. Because I've taped it for clearance anyway, but you want to have no more clearance than you actually need. And you want it to look good. So we smear this along here and hopefully have enough to fill in the gap. And if necessary, I go along afterwards and kind of spatula some extra epoxy along that gap if there's any need to do so. Now I put a little bit of my release agent, which, as I'd mentioned, is paste wax, on the top edge of the stock, so that if I don't get all of this cleaned off while it's still pliable. I can just pop it off of the stock. And that seems like that's going to do the trick. So now the other thing that I do, and this comes back to avoiding the void. Let's see if I can kind of work this stuff down here a little bit. Is that I like to any place on the receiver that's likely to trap air, I like to fill that up with epoxy, because if a cavity is full of epoxy, it won't get full of air. Again, you won't have that void in there. So I'll put just a bit in here behind the lug just to fill that in. Okay. So now, with that little bit of epoxy in there, I think we're ready to set it in. I'm going to, before I do that, set that back down. Before I do that, I'm just going to use all that I have left here and put it down in this recoil lug mortise. Again, just to be sure that I don't end up with a bubble. And there we go. Okay, now we can just set that down in there, like so. And start a screw in here. Now, regarding the screws, I can't overemphasize the importance of having release agent on the threads of those screws. There's just about nothing that can ruin your day more effectively than having screws get stuck in a stock. So now we're going to just squish this down in there on our tape so it's bottomed out, and then we'll tighten up our screws just a little. And in general, I'll go just until I start to see that epoxy ooze out under pressure. Then I back up just enough, and you'll actually see it pull back in a little bit. And that's exactly what you want to happen. Do the same thing at the back. And now, an alternative to that, having the screws do the alignment is proper. But if a person wants to be more certain that the thing's sitting down where you want it to, you can wrap it with tubing or electrical tape works well. That gives you just enough pressure to make sure everything's held in place. So we'll just I'm going to do that now. So I just take a wrap or two of electrical tape, and that'll do the trick as far as making sure that's down where we want it. There we go. And there it is. Now the other thing is, for this to cure, what I'm going to do is I'm going to set it on the rifle rest and the sandbag so that it's sitting more or less as it'll be sitting when it's shot. And then that should let everything be pretty neutral when it's in position being shot. So anyway, we'll do that now. And so for now, that's it. The next thing that'll happen with this rifle is we'll pop it out of the bedding, and hopefully the bedding's then going to look really nice, and even more importantly, it's going to shoot really well. So we'll hope for that. And but until then, this is Will Henry, and I'm out.